Poor Doris's father, a kind man, was poisoned. Doris was sad and panicked upon learning that someone had poisoned him. Doris wanted to run into Charlie's arms to vent her grief, but she realized that she couldn't because Charlie was her boss and had a wife. How the police handled this case is up to you. Please follow the story. Thank you.
Chapter 2351. For Charlie, making the blood rescue pill is just ordinary, not a big deal. However, others can't say this thing. Although it can prolong life, but at least it has a life-saving effect at the most critical moment, which is more important. With it, it is equivalent to saving one life at a critical moment. Warnia is the best example. If it hadn't been for a pill that she carried close to her body, the moment she fell from a cliff in Japan, she would have disappeared like everyone else in a foreign country. Therefore, deep in the hearts of everyone present, they were so excited that there was nothing to add. Charlie distributed the pill one by one, and then said to everyone, "Everyone collect the medicine, let's continue to eat." Then everyone cautiously put the wooden box containing the pill into their pockets, got up, and returned to their seats. After the meal, the guests enjoyed themselves. Until 9 o'clock in the evening, when the meal was over, Doris still did not contact Charlie. Charlie drove away from Chin Gang's villa, and then took out his mobile phone, ready to call Doris, and asked her if she had any trouble. At this moment, Doris was at home, anxiously awaiting the results of police criminal investigators. More than a dozen professional criminal investigators have come to the house to conduct a carpet inspection of the entire house, but the source of the poisoning is still not found. At this moment, the phone in Doris's pocket suddenly rang. She was taken aback by the ringing of the phone, and immediately took out her mobile phone and realized that Charlie was calling. Then she remembered that she also promised Charlie that she would go to the dinner he organized in the evening. However, looking at the time on the phone again, it is already 9 o'clock in the evening. She was stunned by the time, and she thought to herself, why is it 9 o'clock all of a sudden? Oh, she completely forgot about the time. She let the young master's invitation go, the young master will not blame her, right? Thinking of this, she quickly connected to the phone and said in a very sorry tone, "Master. I'm really sorry, I have something in my house, I forgot the time. I'm sorry." Charlie heard the nervousness in her voice, and said, "It's okay, I didn't call to reprimand you or something, I mainly wanted to ask what happened to you, do you need something? Any help?" Doris said hurriedly, "Master, I don't have much need of help, but I encountered some unexpected incidents at home. I have been dealing with it right now, but I was so busy that I forgot the time." Charlie seriously said, "If you need help with anything, you must not be polite to me, just open your mouth and say it." At this moment, Doris was moved in her heart and suddenly remembered the revival pill. One rejuvenating pill is enough to solve all the problems faced by my father. However, the value of the rejuvenating pill is too expensive. I tried to get it at every turn. 1 billion, how can I afford it? Since I can't afford it, should I ask the young master for one? How can I open this mouth? Thinking of this, she felt depressed. Stubbornly said, "Thank you for your kindness, master, I can handle it by myself, but I couldn't make the appointment for your meal. I'm really sorry." Charlie said in a convenient way, "It doesn't matter about the meal is. For family matters, we will have another dinner for another day." Doris gratefully said, "Thank you so much, master." Charlie smiled indifferently, "It's okay, don't be so polite with me." When it came to this, Charlie wanted her to be busy first with the affair at hand, so that he should not delay her handling of family affairs. But at this moment, when he heard from Doris's phone, a man's voice suddenly came out, "Ms. Doris, we found out the source of your father's poison." At this time, Doris was still holding the cell phone, but when she heard this, she had completely forgotten that she was still on the phone with Charlie, and she blurted out and asked nervously, "Officer Ruslan, where is the source of the poisoning you mentioned?" Officer Ruslan held a heavy book in his latex-gloved hand and said, "Our criminal investigators found that every piece of the page in this book contains mercury dichloride. Moreover, we found that this book is very new and many. It is estimated that your father has read this book more frequently recently. He usually reads this book. In this book, the mercury dichloride smeared on his hands will continue to be contaminated, a small part of which will be directly absorbed through the skin, and some may be eaten up reaching stomach with the food when he took food in. The old generation has a bad habit, we can say. Every time they want to turn the page, they wet their fingers by licking it with the tongue. Don't know if your father has such a habit. Doris gently nodded her head, opening. My father does have this habit of reading books. I also said before that it is not hygienic to read books like that, but he has long been used to it, so this problem has never been corrected. Officer Ruslan nodded and said, that's right, I think the excessive mercury dichloride in your father's body comes from this book. Doris was struck by lightning immediately, and she blurted out, Officer Ruslan, is it possible someone deliberately poisoned my dad? Officer Ruslan nodded and said, from the painting process in the book, mercury dichloride is in a very fine powder form, completely spread on the paper, so it is almost colorless and tasteless. It's also difficult to identify, so it can be speculated that this is absolutely artificial, and the other party is very cautious and has a strong sense of anti-reconnaissance. Doris said angrily, my father has taught and educated people throughout his life, and has never offended anyone who would do such a bad thing to him. Officer Ruslan hurriedly asked her, do you know how this book came about? Doris nodded hurriedly and said, this book was received by my father before the Chinese New Year. It was sent by the courier. Officer Ruslan was overjoyed and asked, who is the sender? Doris shook her head and said, the courier at the time did not fill in the sender's information, but it was in it. It brought a note. The person who wrote the note claimed to be a student my dad had taught before. He said that he stumbled across this book abroad and knew that my dad would like it, so he bought it and gave it to him. Quote, Officer Ruslan frowned and asked, without the sender's information, did you ever doubt it? Doris sighed and rebuked herself. My dad has been teaching and educating people for half his life, and the students who have taught don't count it. Many students often mail some books to him, including books published by themselves, or some unknown they found in foreign countries. My father also mails some books he has read to his students. Quote, you also know that books are the most common gifts given to each other by academics, so we really didn't take it too seriously. The officer frowned and asked, do you have the express package? Doris shook her head. My mother cleans those things once a day. Officer Ruslan asked again, what courier company was at that time used by the sender, do you remember? Doris thought for a while and said, it seems to be a copy. The Postal International Express, sent from Greece. When Officer Ruslan heard this, he sighed, and said, it seems that we can't find a clue. Doris hurriedly asked, why? Officer Ruslan explained, if it is really sent from Greece when entering the customs, it will be detected by the customs. The customs inspection methods are much stricter than ours. Many people who are clever and want to cross-border drug trafficking through similar methods will be detected by the customs. Therefore, this kind of poison is smeared. It's impossible to deliver books to your home. After that, Officer Ruslan said seriously, I speculate that the International Express delivery is fake, and the delivery person must also be fake. The murderer is not abroad, but at home. It is very likely to be in Oris Hill. It's in Oris Hill. When Doris heard this, she couldn't help gritting her teeth. Immediately, she said angrily and coldly, this person is doing everything possible to harm my father. I don't know what the intention is. Officer Ruslan, please find a way to get this person to justice. Officer Ruslan nodded and said seriously, this kind of criminal case involving murder is an absolute major and important case. We will do our best to solve it quickly. He sighed as he said, hey, but because there are too few clues at present, I have no time frame to assure you. Doris nodded gently, and said, I understand this. Officer Ruslan said again, by the way, Ms. Doris, please help me recall the time first. When did you receive this express delivery? Let's adjust the surveillance videos around that time period and find out the person delivering the courier first. Doris thought for a while and said, I was very busy at work during the time before the Chinese New Year. I'm not sure, wait for me, I'll call my mother and ask her if she remembers. Okay. Doris immediately picked her cell phone to her eyes and was about to call her mother. Charlie's phone hasn't been hung up, and the number in the column of talk time is still increasing, which proves that he is still on the phone. She felt tight, picked it up hurriedly, and said to Charlie, I'm sorry, young master, it was a little urgent just now, so. Charlie had already heard the whole part of her conversation with Officer Ruslan at this time, so he spoke in an unquestionable tone, and said, Doris, tell me the address of your home. Doris said hurriedly and nervously, Master, it's my family affair, I still don't want to trouble you. Quote. Charlie said coldly, tell me the address, I'm on my way now. Doris heard Charlie's tone, it was very harsh and was immediately suppressed by his aura, so she had to whisper, my house. My house is in the second phase of Sector F Villa 11. Charlie nodded and said, I know this community is not too far away from me. I will be there in 10 minutes. Hearing that Charlie was coming, Doris felt a little nervous. She knew Charlie's status was honorable, and she really didn't want to trouble Charlie with her own affairs. However, she could not help but think again that Charlie is a figure with hands and eyes open to the sky after all. He is not only the young master of the Wade family but also the Master Wade who is highly regarded by the upper class of Oris Hill. If he is willing to help, the probability and efficiency of detecting the murderer's attempt should be improved. Thinking of this, she no longer struggled too much, and decisively agreed, okay master, I'll be waiting for you at the door. After hanging up the phone, Doris called her mother who was in the hospital again. After confirming the time when her father received the book with her mother, the police began to check from the surveillance video to see if they could lock the person who delivered the courier. If they can find this person, they can find the person behind the scenes. At the same time, Officer Ruslan also advised Doris not to live at home in the near future. After all, this has risen to the height of a criminal case, and the other party's methods are concealed. Doris accepted Officer Ruslan's suggestion and planned to move directly to the hospital tonight, and guard her father in the hospital with her mother. At the same time, Officer Ruslan also promised to send a few plainclothes police officers to secretly deploy control in the hospital to prevent the murderer from acting on their family. After the technical staff of the Criminal Investigation Division collected the evidence, Officer Ruslan prepared to lead the team to evacuate. They have already obtained the evidence, the next thing to do is to search for clues, so they are not going to continue to spend time in Doris's villa. Before leaving, Officer Ruslan said to Doris, Ms. Doris, I suggest you leave home now and go to the People's Hospital. Doris nodded and said seriously, thank you Officer Ruslan, I'll just pack up and drive over. Quote. Officer replied, all right, I will return to the team, organize a task force meeting here at the same time investigate any progress. I will be the first to inform you, but you and your mother can help us by recalling some useful details. If there are any new clues, please inform me in time. Doris said sincerely, no problem. Excuse me, Officer Ruslan. After repeated thanks, Doris sent the group of policemen out. Several police cars roared away. Before Doris could move, Charlie drove the BMW 5 Series of Mr. Jacob, his old father-in-law's, to Doris's door. Charlie saw Doris at the door, so he parked the car in front of her. Just stopped the car, then pushed out the door. Charlie's face was anxious. He asked, Doris, why didn't you tell me about your father's poisoning incident? Seeing Mr. Wade's appearance so anxious, Doris was deeply moved. Looking at Charlie's handsome face, Doris felt a little more at ease, but also a little bit more of the kind of grievances peculiar to Little Women made its way to her heart. She has always been in the image of a strong woman in front of others, and her performance is also very strong, but deep down, she still can't escape the essence of a young woman. In the face of such a major tribulation and change, she was holding on alone, already reaching her limit. She also desires to have a strong and powerful shoulder, so that she can rely on, even if it only allows her to have a moment of relaxation. It can also bring great comfort to her in time of need. Therefore, at the moment when she saw Charlie appear in front of her, Doris just wanted to hold him and cry. However, the trace of reason left in Doris's heart is constantly admonishing herself. No. Absolutely not, he is my boss, and he is the young master of Wade family, how can I go up and hug him? Doris put aside the absurd idea in her mind, and said in a low voice with red eyes, Master, my father has been in the hospital since the Chinese New Year due to renal failure. We thought it has to do with the transplant that he had a couple of years ago. But today I came to know that he was poisoned by mercury-dichloride, and it was done deliberately. Charlie asked her, then how is your father's condition now? Doris choked up, he is in a very poor condition now. The doctor said that the window for a kidney transplant is at most 15 days, but he happens to have Rh-negative blood. It is very difficult to match the blood type. In a short period of time, the possibility of finding the source of the kidney is very slim. Charlie nodded and said without hesitation, "Get in the car, let's go to the People's Hospital." "I am coming with you," Doris said hurriedly. "Master. How embarrassed to trouble you about this matter," Charlie said with a serious expression. "Doris, your father is poisoned, it's not time to feel embarrassed, it is not normal kidney failure. The doctor told you today. He has a window period of 15 days, and tomorrow is likely to become 10 days, even 5 days. In such a short period of time, if you hope to find a suitable kidney source, the possibility is not very slim, but it's almost impossible." When Doris heard this, she lowered her head unconsciously. At this moment, she couldn't help feeling in her heart, the young master is wrong, that's how the father's situation is, every day is rapidly deteriorating, and there is no hope at all. The only glimmer of hope is the successfully matched kidney source that Walter found in the United States. However, Walter's condition is simply a great insult to her personality and character. However, if I am not willing to accept his terms, I must be prepared for my father to die at any time. Thinking of this, Doris's eyes were sore, tears burst out in an instant, dripping uncontrollably on the cold concrete floor. Subsequently, Doris's negative emotions accumulated for many days exploded in an instant, and slowly squatted on the ground, crying with her headache she just could not stop. Seeing that Doris, who has always been strong, was sobbing silently at this moment, his heart couldn't help but feel a little distressed, and he thought to himself, she must have reached the point where she is desperate, and her emotions cannot collapse like this. Quote, thinking of this, he squatted in front of Doris, patted her shoulder gently, and said seriously, "Doris, it doesn't matter if you can't find the source of the kidney. I have a better way to save your father than to find the source of the kidney. Come, it will save the old man the pain of getting a knife on the operating table." When Doris heard this, she couldn't help but raised her head, looked at Charlie in amazement, choked up, and said, "Master, are you telling the truth?" "Of course it is true." Charlie nodded, stretched out his hand and opened the co-pilot's car door, and said to Doris, "Get in the car. Let's go to the hospital and get your dad's body cured first, and then thoroughly check who it is that poisoned your father." When Doris recovered, Charlie had already opened the front seat door and gently pushed her on the back towards the car door. Doris recalled what he had said a moment ago, and asked with a face full of disbelief, "Master, do you really have a way to cure my father?" Charlie nodded, looked at her red eyes, and said seriously, "Since I have said it, it must be possible." Doris subconsciously said, but the doctors say that kidney failure is irreversible." Charlie said word by word, "If the doctor can't reverse it, it doesn't mean that Charlie can't." As he said, Charlie took out the pill that was originally prepared for Doris from his pocket and said, "This medicine was originally prepared for you to take it, and you will take it to your father when you get to the hospital. Ensure that he is given this pill, the medicine will cure the disease." Doris was shocked and stunned. "Young master, you said that this medicine was originally prepared for me. Did you already know about my father?" Charlie shook his head and said, "The main reason why I organized a dinner today is to thank you all for visiting my house during the Chinese New Year and paying my gratitude. That's why I prepared a blood-saving and heart-saving treatment for everyone. Pill, although this medicine is not as effective as a rejuvenating pill, it is enough to treat your father's illness." When Doris heard this, the whole person was still a little bit in a dream. She subconsciously asked, "Master, this medicine can really cure my father?" Charlie said, "If he can be cured or not, you'll know when you get to the hospital. Get in the car." Although Doris couldn't be 100% sure whether Charlie's pill could cure her father, she was very excited at this time, nodded hurriedly, and sat in the car under Charlie's urging. Subsequently, Charlie started the car and drove quickly to Oris Hill People's Hospital. At the same time, Walter, who was in the Oris Hill International Hotel, received a call from his subordinates. As soon as the other party came up, he said hurriedly, "Boss, I heard a person from Oris Hill Police say that the police have found a book containing mercury dichloride from Doris's house. Now a special team has been set up and it has started to trace the clues of the book." "What?" Walter exclaimed and blurted out, "How can the Oris Hill Police be so fast?" The other party said, "We didn't expect that their efficiency would be so high." Walter hesitated for a moment and said, when you pretended to be a courier to deliver the express, did you leave any clues? The man thought for a while and said, there should be none. The car that delivered the courier was not a licensed car. It is impossible to find clues. The disguised courier was also wearing a mask and should not be found. Walter furrowed his brows, his expression gloomy, and his huge hooked nose made him look a little bit harsher. He thought for a moment, then said, immediately kill the guy who went there acting as the courier. The other party was obviously taken aback, and only a moment later said in a bit of horror, old boss. David usually performs well and is very clever. There is no need to treat him for such a thing. He won't be exposed, he is still very safe. Is it necessary? Walter said coldly, do you Fu King understand criminal investigation? He is the only person exposed to the police at the moment, even if he wears a mask. Do you think wearing a mask is absolutely safe? Yet, a person has ears, nose, mouth, and eyebrows on his face. The mask can only cover his mouth and nose. The police can still monitor his basic face shape, eyes, eyebrows, and ears through surveillance video. They can clearly see his body shape, his height, his hairstyle, and his walking posture. If Doris's surveillance videotape radio microphone is at the door of Doris's house, the police can still grasp his voice characteristics. With so many clues exposed, do you still think he is very safe? When the other party heard this, the nervous voice immediately trembled. Yes, sorry boss. I didn't think of this, so serious. Walter gritted his teeth and said, you tell that little David, and you say that I have prepared for him $1 million in cash, and then ask him to take that away quickly, and then you will drive him away from Oris Hill with someone in the middle. Get rid of him. As he said, Walter hurriedly ordered, remember to use the method of poisoning and never spill blood. If you get blood everywhere, it will be difficult to deal with the scene of the crime. The other party hurriedly asked, boss, what should I do with the corpse? How about throwing it directly into the river? If the river is more than 100 meters deep, there is a high probability that it will not be found. Walter said contemptuously, stupid. No matter how deep the river water is, there are undercurrents at the bottom of the river. Undercurrents will wash things downstream from the bottom of the river. Once the corpse reaches the shallow water area downstream, it is likely to be washed away. Going ashore. Otherwise, how do you think those Shen Yang's bodies were discovered? Hearing this, the other party hurriedly asked, boss, do you have any good ideas? Walter thought for a while and said coldly, so, you go find an anchor used on a speedboat, tie the corpse with an iron chain, hang the anchor, and throw it into the river with the anchor. The anchor it would be like a fixed boat, fixing the body in the sand on the bottom of the river. It is difficult for the undercurrent to take him away. The other party hurriedly agreed and blurted out, okay boss. I'll do it now. Walter hung up the phone, and a man with a dark face paced in front of the window, cursing in a low voice, damn. I really didn't expect that the Oris Hill police could be so fast. Doris, it seems I have to push you again. Can you take it? Having said that, he immediately picked up his cell phone and dialed his phone. As soon as the phone was connected, Walter immediately said in a cold voice, prepare the car immediately. We are going to the Oris Hill People's Hospital in 5 minutes. Oris Hill International Hotel is located in the city center, closer to Oris Hill People's Hospital than Doris's villa locality. Therefore, when Walter got into Rolls-Royce and set off for the hospital, Charlie and Doris had just walked halfway. When Charlie parked the car and walked into the inpatient building of the People's Hospital with Doris, Walter's car also followed into the parking lot. Doris was excited and nervous at the same time, and she would not consciously turn into a run after taking 2 steps. Charlie also speeded up and followed her all the way to the door of the ward. Pushing the door and entering, Doris's mother Lethina was lying in front of the bed to rest. Although Lethina was only in her 50s, she was very tired at this time. Her mental state seemed to be indistinguishable from an old lady in her 60s or 70s. Hearing the sound of the two entering the door, Lethina raised her head. Seeing that it was her daughter Doris and a man she did not know, she was a little surprised and asked, Doris, who is this? Doris subconsciously wanted to say that Charlie is her boss, but Charlie took the lead at this time and said with a smile, hello auntie, my name is Charlie, I am Doris's friend. Lethina nodded hurriedly, and said politely, "Oh, hello, Mr. Charlie." Seeing that Charlie did not want to reveal his identity as the chairman of the Embrand Group, Doris hurriedly said to her mother, "Mom, Charlie has a miraculous medicine that can cure all diseases. Dad can be saved this time." As soon as the voice fell, the door of the ward was pushed open. Walter sneered as he walked in, "Which magic stick said he has a magic medicine that can cure all diseases? You have created money into a regular hospital, so brave." Seeing Walter coming in, Doris's face immediately became very ugly. She glared at Walter and said coldly, "You are not welcome here. Please go out." Walter smiled with interest, and said, "Doris, how come your temper will go up at night?" After that, he paced to Doris, smiled disdainfully, and said, "Ha ha, Doris, you are turning so fast now because you got the cure for all diseases. The magic drug. In our United States, there are often some Washa magic sticks cheating money in Chinatown, but as long as they are caught by the federal police, without exception, they will all be sent to jail. But here it seems they have an exception." Quote. Speaking of this, he couldn't help but look at Charlie, looked up and down at him for a moment, and asked Doris with a smile, "Is this the magic stick? It looks like he is younger than most of the magic sticks I have seen." Seeing Walt's arrogant appearance, Charlie couldn't help but frown. He saw Walter for the first time, and he didn't know the relationship and entanglement between Doris and Walter. Even Doris's father was seriously ill and was hospitalized. He had heard about it not long ago, so he was a little confused about the sudden emergence of Walter in front of him, and he didn't know the origin of this blonde foreigner. When Doris heard that Walter described Charlie as a sacred stick, she immediately scolded angrily, "Walter, don't rant here. This is the Master Charlie Wade who everyone knows in Oris Hill. Not the so-called sacred stick in your mouth." Quote. Walter curled his lips and said disdainfully, "Don't all of you in this place want to be masters of some kind? What Qigong masters, metaphysics masters, feng shui masters, there are masters everywhere. In my opinion, they are all King liars." Quote. Charlie was already a little upset at this time, so he said, "I advise you to respect and think it before you speak. This is my city, not your backyard." Walter looked at Charlie and said contemptuously, "Boy, I don't want to talk too much nonsense with you. I'm here to talk to Doris about her father. People who have nothing to do with her can get away as soon as possible." Charlie sneered and said, "You have a big tone. What on earth is it that gives you the confidence to speak out here?" Walter sneered with an arrogant look, "My name is Walter Hogwitz, your magic stick. Have you heard of the famous Hogwitz family in America?" Charlie smiled indifferently, "Sorry, I have never heard of the Witz family that you are talking about." Walter said coldly, "I'm telling you. The Hogwitz family is a well-known large real estate developer in the United States. Its business not only covers the United States, but also has large industries in Canada, the United Kingdom, Germany, and France. King's Manhattan, New York, has a building named after the Hogwitz family." Charlie curled his lips and smiled. "You have a building in Manhattan, New York, so you dare to come to this place to show that off. Did you carry that building on your back?" Walter frowned upon hearing this. He could hear that the meaning of Charlie's words was to ridicule his mansion in Manhattan, New York, which would not work well in China. So he shouted coldly, "Boy, although the building can't be moved, the dollars in my account can be circulated around the world anytime and anywhere. This is called hard currency and hard power, understand?" Charlie nodded and said with a smile, "When you say this, I will understand." After speaking, Charlie couldn't help asking curiously, "I don't know how much you Hogwitz family are worth in total." Walter snorted coldly, "That's naturally over 10 billion. As he said, Walter waved his hand in disgust, and muttered, "I don't understand what I am doing with you, a god stick." Immediately afterward, he directly looked at Doris on the side and went straight to the subject. "Doris, I don't want to talk too much nonsense with you. I have said many things countless times, and my mouth is full of cocoons. I'll say it again for the last time. It's Uncle's kidney problem. Do you want to agree to my terms? If you don't agree, the kidney source can't be retained." Doris subconsciously asked, "Didn't you tell me to answer you in 24 hours? It's just a long time before I reach that point." Walter smiled and said, "Sorry, the French suddenly added $50,000 to the donor in order to grab this kidney source. Now the donor has been a little shaken, and he wants me to settle it down with him as soon as possible. Otherwise, he will sell it directly to the French, so you have to give me a clear answer now, yes or no. Charlie asked Doris at this time, Doris, what's going on? Doris replied, Master, this Walter is a classmate who was studying in the United States with me. He helped my dad find a successful kidney source in the United States, but the requirement is. When talking about this, Doris suddenly became stammered. Walter's terms were so shameless that she couldn't even describe them in words. At this time, Walter sneered, My request is very simple, let Doris be my lover for 10 years. Give me a few children. Why? Do you have an opinion about this? In fact, Walter still has a lot of business requirements for Doris, and even wants her to help him hollow out the Embrand Group. It's just that Walter didn't say this in front of Charlie. However, Walter had reservations, but it still made Charlie angry and unbearable. He grabbed Walter by the collar and slapped him with his other hand. This slap made Walter dizzy, not only half of his face swelled up, but even the corners of his mouth and nostrils began to bleed continuously. He was so dizzy that he could hardly stand still. Charlie said coldly at this moment, Remember, any woman is not something you can insult casually. He covered his side face in pain, and cursed angrily, "Is dollar hole. Do you dare to hit me? No one ever dared to raise their hand on me in my entire life. You be it star dare to hit me in the face." Charlie sneered, raised his hand and slapped him fiercely once again. Seeing that his face was swollen into a symmetrical shape and looked like a pig's head, he said coldly, "Your parents never taught you. Do you have to learn how to behave with your tail caught in someone else's territory?" Walter was beaten up, and his heart was already extremely angry. At the same time, he regretted it very much. He felt that he was carrying a bodyguard on this trip, but because he came to see Doris, he didn't let the bodyguard come upstairs. Otherwise, how could he be hit by someone like Charlie? Walter himself is a tall man and occasionally exercises fitness. The punching force is much greater than that of an average adult. In addition, he is angry at this time, and he subconsciously waved his hands to fight back. He raised his fist and hit Charlie's nose. He has always been insidious, and the tactic he planned in his heart was to smash Charlie's nose with one punch. Once the bridge of the nose is broken, the severe pain will make the receiver unable to open their eyes, and the combat effectiveness will drop rapidly. Immediately afterward, he can directly kick the vital parts below him, completely abolishing all his fighting power. Walter's trick is the most detrimental in street fighting. He hits the opponent's nose with his forehead first and then takes advantage of his lack of preparation to take the key. It often allows people to turn defeat into victory at an absolute disadvantageous time. However, Walter didn't know what terrible strength the seemingly gentle and even thin man in front of him had. Walter slammed a punch, thinking that he was already determined to win. But he thought about it, this punch went out, and when Charlie was about to face the impact, he was suddenly caught by a big hand. This big hand is so powerful that he suddenly slams a punch, instantly removing all the strength. Not only that, but he can't even let his fists go forward. Walter was shocked, and hurriedly wanted to pull his fists back, but in the next second, he discovered that the opponent's strength was so great that he could not shake these big hands with all his strength. It feels like an ant is pressed at the fingertips of a giant, completely without any ability to resist. In Walter's opinion, this almost violates the common sense of physics. In his opinion, even if the opponent is very strong, he can't break away from the opponent's restraint at all. But if he uses all the strength to pull, the opponent's arm must at least move with it. Even if the opponent is a world champion, it is impossible to get rid of violently, ensuring that his arm is almost motionless. Only at this moment did Walter realize that he was in trouble. With such a weird skill, even if the bodyguard follows him up, it is of no use. So, he immediately put on an extremely flattering expression, and confessed, "Mr. Wade, I am really sorry. I have just arrived, but I don't know the rules, and I hope you don't have acquaintance with me." Charlie grabbed his fist tightly, and asked with a sneer, "What? If you can't beat me, you will admit defeat. This is what you call the Hogwarts family style." Walter thought that Charlie would dare to humiliate his family. Naturally, he was extremely angry. However, he knew very well that the disparity in strength between himself and Charlie was too great, and only by recognizing counsel could he minimize the loss. As for the lost face, it doesn't matter much, the big deal is when you find the opportunity to get it back 1,000 times, a temporary setback is nothing. Thinking of this, he immediately laughed and said, Mr. Wade, as you say, the Hogwarts family does have some strength in the United States, but this is China, Oris Hill, and it is not my turn to be wild here. After finishing speaking, he pretended to be pious and pleaded, Mr. Wade, please see that I am the first offender and have already been slapped by you. Just forgive me this time. Seeing his face swollen into a pig's head, Charlie coldly snorted, you don't even realize what your biggest mistake is. So, in my opinion, your superficial apology is just nothing more than the skill of getting out of trouble, there is no real intention in it. Walter's scared face turned pale, and he blurted out, Mr. Wade, you really misunderstood me. I know that I am wrong, and I say that with all my intentions. I apologize. Charlie sneered, and then suddenly twisted his right hand, and Walter's wrist broke at the sound of a click. Walter screamed in pain immediately, and almost collapsed and shouted, my hand. Why did you treat me this way? I have already submitted to you. Charlie looked at him and said coldly, the person you should apologize to most is not me, but Doris. You threatened her with your kidney source to achieve your shameful nasty goals. Have you ever thought about it? Want to apologize to her? As soon as Walter heard this, he hurriedly looked at Doris on the side and blurted out, Doris. I was wrong. I really knew it was wrong. Please don't be angry with me, and help me with Mr. Wade. Please, please. At this moment, Doris felt more or less compassionate. Although she knew that Walter was a nasty person, in her opinion, Walter's nastiness was only his own wishful thinking, and she did not agree with him, nor was she intimidated by him. And looking at the current Walter, he had been beaten badly enough, and even one of his wrists was broken, which is almost the same. So she said to Charlie, Mr. Wade, let him go, after all, I have nothing to lose. Charlie nodded. He also didn't want to be familiar with Walter anymore. The descendant of an American real estate developer, worth tens of billions of dollars, will not be ignored by the government itself, not to mention this is still in Oris Hill. Therefore, as long as this Walter rolls farther from now on, he doesn't bother to be angry with him. So, he stared at Walter and warned word by word, from now on, don't let me see you again, and don't let Doris see you again, understand? When Walter heard this, he immediately felt the granting of amnesty. He looked at Charlie and nodded like garlic and said, Mr. Wade, don't worry, I will definitely not appear in front of you and Doris in the future. When he said this, Walter thought in his heart, okay, you little thing named Wade, you fucking dare to beat me, and you dare to break my wrist. If I don't kill you, my name is not Walter. Charlie didn't bother to listen to his nonsense at this time, loosened his hand, and said disdainfully, hurry up. Get out of here, now. Walter nodded again and again, yes, yes. I'll get out of here. Now get out of. With that, he turned around and walked out. At this moment, Charlie frowned slightly, and suddenly called him sternly, wait a moment. I have a question for you. Chapter 2361. Walter thought he could get away with it, but he didn't expect Charlie to ask him questions at this time. So, he was taken aback, turned his head hurriedly, and asked with a smile, Mr. Wade, what else do you have to order? Charlie looked at him and smiled, it's not a matter of importance. Just to ask you something. Walter breathed a sigh of relief and hurriedly said, Mr. Wade, just ask. Charlie nodded slightly and smiled and asked, mercury dichloride, do you know what it is? Walter snorted in his heart and replied with pretending surprise on his face, no. I don't know. What is mercury dichloride? At the moment of speaking, Walter suddenly had a sudden heart drop. With excellent psychological quality, he made his expression not much obvious. However, Charlie still noticed the imperceptible stiffness and panic on his face. Almost at this moment, Charlie concluded that Walter must be inseparable from the poisoning of Doris's father. Therefore, Charlie's expression became gloomy at this moment. He grabbed Walter by the collar and sternly shouted, if you tell the truth, I will let you die a little bit faster. Walter shook his head, again and again, blurting out his innocence. Said, Mr. Wade, are you making a mistake? I don't understand what mercury dichloride is, why did you catch me again because of this? Doris was also shocked. Just now, when Charlie asked Walt suddenly if she knew what mercury dichloride was, she felt a little bit in her heart. She was shocked because she had never thought that her father would be killed by Walter. Because she had always preconceived that Walter appeared after her father was seriously ill, trying to take advantage of the fire, but she didn't think about it, Walter was actually the initiator of her father's serious illness. So at that moment, she looked at Walter without blinking, hoping to see if he was lying. However, Walter's expression management ability is still very strong, so that Doris really did not see anything abnormal from his face. Therefore, at this moment, she even doubted whether Charlie had made a mistake. However, Charlie was not bewitched by Walter's innocent expression at all. He stared at Walter's eyes and said coldly, "I'll give you one last chance. If you still don't tell the truth, what awaits you next may be the 18 layers of hell you never thought about before." Quote. Walter swallowed hard, crying, and said, "Mr. Wade, I really don't understand what you are talking about. I didn't learn chemistry, and I don't understand what mercury dichloride is. I know carbon dioxide." Charlie nodded lightly and sneered, "Okay, you choose everything yourself. You don't have to regret it in the future." After that, he immediately put his hand in Walter's pocket. He took out his Apple mobile phone and sneered, "Come on, stretch your face over and let me unlock it. Let me see if there is any shameful deed in your phone or you are clean as you say." Walter was frightened, and blurted out, "You cannot invade others' privacy at your will. I have the right to let a lawyer sue you." Charlie pretended to be surprised and said, "Oh, when I hit you just now, you didn't say that you want a lawyer to sue me. Now as I talk about the phone, you want a lawyer to sue me. Is there really something shameful on your phone?" "No, absolutely nothing," Walter said in a panic. "In my phone, there are all the trade secrets of the Hogwarts family and they are of great importance. If you read it, Mr. Wade, if it leaks out, it will definitely bring great economic losses to the family." Quote. Charlie smiled and said, "It's okay if it really causes economic losses, the big deal is that you will be with me here. I am already contented with my own money. For one thing, Wade never lacked money." Walter wanted to find an excuse to refuse, but Charlie had already pointed the front camera of his phone at him. I have to say that facial recognition on mobile phones is really easy to use. Even though Walter's cheeks were swollen, the phone immediately unlocked through reading his iris on the face. Once the phone is open, it is easy to navigate through the app usage and find out what he has been up to recently. Though the phone language is English, Charlie can still manage to navigate through it. Although he did not go to university, he received top-notch international education when he was young. Like current international schools, he has grown up in a multilingual environment since he was young. In particular, Charlie's mother is of Chinese-American descent, and English is one of her mother tongues, and she has received top aristocratic education since she was a child. She was not only proficient in English and Chinese but also had a deep experience in Japanese, French, and Spanish. In China, it seems very rare for a person to speak multiple languages. This is mainly because China itself is not an immigrant country. Most of the population of more than 1 billion speaks more or less that same language that is Chinese. The United States is different. The United States itself is an immigrant country. There are many English-speaking Europeans and many Chinese-speaking Chinese. Because it is very close to Mexico, there are many Spanish speakers as well. In addition, Japan, South Korea, Vietnam in Asia, Germany, France, and Italy in Europe have had a large number of immigrants to the United States for settlement in the past 200 years. The biggest advantage of living in such an environment is being able to come into contact with cultures and languages from all over the world. Therefore, Charlie also benefited a lot from his mother, and it laid for him a good language foundation since he was a child. Turning on Walter's cell phone, Charlie's first thing is to read SMS and WeChat. Although it is all in English, it seems that it is effortless. Walter's entire face was ashen as hell. He almost desperately said, "You can't read my information record. This is illegal." Charlie said coldly while looking through it, "Close your mouth, otherwise, I will cut off your other hand too." Walter looked terrified. He has no idea what to do now. If he just shuts up, Charlie will definitely find evidence of poisoning Doris's father from the chat records, but, if he doesn't shut up, what will be the result? At most, Charlie would break his hand again, and then wait for Charlie to turn over the evidence. Thinking of this, he regretted it very much and wailed in his heart, "I'm such AFC king loser. Why should I come to the hospital at this time? Why, that too without my bodyguards? If I don't come tonight, I might not encounter this be it starred. If I didn't meet this be it starred, I won't be tortured so badly." For him, this torture is even nothing. If they find out that he ordered someone else to poison Doris's father and get the evidence, his career will be finished. The police will catch him and prosecute him for homicide. In this case, he will have to spend the next whole decade behind the bars. This is something unacceptable for him. Just when Walter was panicking, he just received a WeChat message on his mobile phone. The person who sent the WeChat had a Chinese nickname, named a song. From the list, it could be seen that what Song had sent was a picture, so Charlie opened the message of Song directly. It doesn't matter if you look at it, the photo that Song sent is actually a corpse with foam at the mouth. At this time, the corpse was lying crookedly on a seat in a car. He stared very wide and his expression was very hideous. At first sight, it seemed he had died of poison. Just when Charlie was surprised, a Song sent another message with a sentence written in English, to the effect, "Boss, the man has been killed, I will sink him to Shenzhong later, don't worry, this clue is definitely completely broken." Quote. Charlie immediately flipped through the chat records of a Song and Walter. The chat records of the two did not have a long conversation. Most of them were, "Finished, coming soon, come here soon. Well done," and other such short sentences. It seems that the two people don't usually use WeChat to communicate very often. However, Charlie soon discovered that in the chat records of the two, Walter actually sent it to Song in Chinese. The words were, "mercury dichloride." And, shortly afterward, Walter sent another one in English, "Remember this term, don't make a mistake." As soon as he saw this word, Charlie's pupils shrank suddenly. Immediately, he stared at Walter and asked harshly, "Who is this a Song? Why did you ask him to remember mercury dichloride?" When Doris heard this word, her eyes widened, and she hurriedly walked to Charlie to check. Seeing that the words, "mercury dichloride," appeared in the chat history between Walter and Song, Doris immediately understood what is going on. She questioned Walter angrily, "Walter, I have no grievances with you, and have been classmates for many years, why did you harm my father?" Walter trembled in fright, and said stupidly, I don't have. I really don't." Charlie opened the photo of the corpse that Song had just sent, handed it to Walter, and asked, "I will give you one last time. The last opportunity, explain exactly what you are doing, otherwise, you will never want to go back to the United States alive in your life." Walter looked at the photo, and the whole person was struck by lightning. A Song's WeChat message was sent after Charlie took his phone away, so he saw this photo for the first time at this time. He recognized the corpse in the photo at a glance, the subordinate who pretended to be a courier and delivered the courier to Doris's house. It seems that a Song quickly executed his order and directly tricked his subordinate to poison him in the car. At this moment, cold sweat was gushing out of his pores, and his heart was already panicked to the extreme. He was worried that his poisoning of Doris's father would be revealed, but then, even if it was revealed, at least Doris's father was not dead. The Chinese judicial organs would convict him. How long the sentence could be? Short sentences maybe. However, this subordinate is dead. He instructed a Song to kill that person himself, so he can't escape this intentional homicide. After all, in Chinese law, anyone who abets others to commit a crime must be punished as the principal offender. He instigated his men to kill someone, even if he didn't do it himself. Once he goes to court, it would be at least life imprisonment. If the crime of poisoning Doris's father is added, maybe he will be sentenced to a suspended death sentence. Thinking of this, he suddenly collapsed, knelt on the ground with a puff, and said, "I'm sorry, it's all me. I was confused for a while, I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it." Charlie slapped his face and asked, "You instructed your subordinates to kill and say you didn't mean it? Are you fucking kidding me?" Walter covered his face and cried and said, I'm just a ghost. I wanted to possess Doris, and I want Doris to leave Embrand Group resign, then joined to help me expand our family's business in China. I wanted her to steal the Embrand Group's business secrets and help me gain a foothold in China as soon as possible, so I just made the move and wanted to force her to submit. When Doris heard this, the whole person was angry. Doris, who has always been very educated, couldn't control herself at this moment. She slapped Walter angrily and rebuked him hysterically. Why? Why did you do this? My father's life, is it that cheap for you? Your bargaining chip to develop your career and satisfy your animality. Why are you so vicious? Tell me, why? Doris's mother heard this, and her blood pressure soared. She shivered and rebuked. You beast. You pay back my husband's life. After she finished speaking, she only felt dizzy in her brain, and she lost consciousness and fell straight to the ground. Doris's face was shocked, and she blurted out subconsciously and shouted, "Mom." Charlie hurriedly held Doris's mother, and then checked her breath and found that it was just an insufficiency of blood supply to the brain caused by her anger. Life was in danger, so he gently helped her to lie down on the sofa. At this moment, Walter covered his face and cried bitterly, "Doris, I beg you to forgive me this time. I can call the staff in the United States immediately and ask them to perform kidney removal surgery on the donor. Tomorrow morning send over to the uncle for transplant. Quote, I can give you $10 million as compensation if 10 million is not enough, then 20 million, said Walter, crying again and begging, Doris, please, give me a chance. Please, don't hand me over to the police. Quote, at this time, Walter is not afraid of Charlie, as much as of the police. He felt that Charlie would beat him up, but his real trouble was the judicial department. After all, he's not from China, and he doesn't have many personal connections in China. If he is arrested by the police and prosecuted, he would be sentenced to a suspended death sentence. Walter still has some understanding of Chinese laws. Once sentenced to death with a suspended death sentence, even if he is actively reformed in prison, he will never think of coming out of it for at least 20 years. He is the eldest son of tens of billions of dollars family, living a life of the most top, most extravagant, most wanton, most presumptuous dude. If he were to go to prison for more than 20 years, it would be more painful than killing him. When Doris heard his pleading, she suddenly trembled with anger. She stared at Walter hard and screamed coldly, I tell you, Walter. In any case, I will not let you escape the law. Wait, I will call the police and get you arrested. Walter was so frightened that he cried and wailed, no, Doris. I beg you, Doris, don't hand me over to the police. Even if you don't want to forgive me, you must consider Uncle's life. If I really get caught, who will find you the kidney source? Who will save your father's life? As a daughter, you can't just watch your father die. Facing Walter's dying struggle, Charlie said calmly, Walter, don't worry, Doris's father would not die without your kidney source. Walter kept on shaking his head. He said confidently, impossible, absolutely impossible. Rh-negative kidney source is very difficult to find. Without my kidney source, he can only wait to die. After finishing, he knelt in front of Doris, crying said, Doris, I beg you, as long as you are willing to let me go and don't hand me over to the police, I can give you $100 million. Please, don't hand me over to the police. Otherwise, my whole life will be over. Doris was about to refuse, and Charlie smiled slightly and said, Walter, don't worry, I will never hand you over to the police. Walter thought his promise of $100 million worked, and he hurriedly said, Mr. Wade, as long as you let me leave Oris Hill, I will pay you $100 million immediately after I arrive in the United States. Charlie waved his hand. Friend, don't get me wrong, what I said is that I won't hand you over to the police, but it doesn't mean that I will let you go. These are two different things. Walter looked at Charlie in panic, blurted out, then you. What do you want? Charlie smiled. Don't worry, what I want, you will know soon. After that, Charlie grabbed his collar. Sternly asked, I ask you, how many people did you bring to the People's Hospital this time? Say one less or one more, and I'll let someone remove your arm. Walter shivered with fright, and quickly said, Lien the driver brought bodyguards, a total of 5 people. Charlie continued to ask, where are these people? Where are they? Walter said honestly, they are all at the entrance of the lobby downstairs. In the car, there are 2 cars in total, one is a Rolls-Royce and the other is a Buick business. Charlie nodded, immediately pulled a group on WeChat, brought in Isaac and Orville, and then started a group voice chat. After the two received them, they immediately connected and asked in their voices, "Master, what do you want?" Charlie said seriously, "Mr. Isaac, Orville, immediately send your most elite subordinates to help me grab all of Walter Hogwitz's men, and don't keep any of them." After that, Charlie said again, "Oh, yes, he has his men in Oris Hill People's Hospital, just outside the lobby of the inpatient department. In the car, a Rolls-Royce and a Buick commercial, there are 5 people in total. You quietly send someone over and bring them all to me." Isaac asked in surprise, "Master, why are you conflicting with Walter?" Charlie asked him, "Do you know Walter? Have you met him?" "No, but I know this person." Isaac explains, "Hogwarts family, although not in the United States top family, but still some people are famous from this lineage, so people like Walter come to Oris Hill, and they will be observed." "Observed?" Charlie asked curiously, "Did you send someone to follow this piece?" "Yes," Isaac said. "The task given to me by the Wade family is to control the entire Oris Hill situation. Not only do I need to clean up and grasp some of the internal conditions of Oris Hill, but also know the external conditions. Once some people with background come to Oris Hill, I will make a record of their activities." Quote, Charlie asked him, "Is this Hogwitz family a real big shot?" Isaac thought for a while and said seriously, "Speaking of this Hogwitz family, the backing is not very big, right now." He continued to explain, "All the assets of the Hogwitz family add up to about $10 billion US. They are not even in the top 200 in the United States, but they have some special background." Charlie asked, "What special background?" Isaac explained, "The Hogwitz family and the Rothschild family are more or less related." Oh, Charlie couldn't help but move when he heard the Rothschild family. He knew that the highest moment of his father's life was to lead the Wade family and several other families to fight against the economic aggression of the Rothschild family. That time, he caused the Rothschild family to suffer a lot of property damage and face loss. Therefore, Charlie also suspects that the death of his parents may be related to the Rothschilds. Because of this, when he heard that Walter and Rothschild's family having some relationship, he cannot help but sigh in his heart. "I did not expect the first time I met with the Rothschilds, even coming so fast." So Charlie curiously asked Isaac, "The Hogwitz family, and the Rothschild family, what kind of relative relationship is there currently?" Isaac introduced, "At most, it is as distant relatives. After all, the Rothschild family has been in development for so many years. There are tens of thousands of people in their own family named Rothschild. Besides, there are even more relatives with foreign surnames. In other words, Walter's grandma is a member of the Rothschild family, but his grandma's line is not the core of the Rothschild family. At most, it is equivalent to a Gurgur in the Qing dynasty, and it is also very important among the relatives of the emperor. The kind of marginalized style." Charlie smiled slightly, "I understand. Rothschild's name is almost unknown in this part of the world. Such a superfamily with a history of hundreds of years, its personnel scale is no less than that of the Qing dynasty's relatives and Bakizi brothers in China. Within such a family, there must be many branches, and there is a clear primary and secondary relationship between these branches. Just like Charlie's family. The line of Mr. Wade's Zhongquan Wade is only the main line of the entire Wade family and the core line of the Wade family. As for the branches that cannot be counted across the country, they are all branches without exception. Some branches are Zhongquan Wade's own brothers, so the relationship is a little closer. However, some branches and Zhongquan Wade's blood relationship is distant, and naturally, they would not have a deep relationship with Zhongquan Wade's family. This kind of branch that can't be beaten by 8 poles, although the name is Wade, is too low for the Wade family. The Rothschild family must be the same. There may even be more branches than the Wade family. Walter's grandmother, although a member of the Rothschild family, is in a very distant line when considered in importance. She speaks lightly and has no sense of existence. Otherwise, it is impossible for her to marry the Hogwitz family for decades, and the assets of the Hogwitz family are only about $10 billion US. Isaac said immediately, "No problem, Master, I will make arrangements." Orville asked, "Master, what should happen to this group of people after we catch them?" Charlie ordered, All his subordinates will be locked up to be fed by Ray's dogs. Take them to the field, vacate the largest dog cage, strip them naked, and lock them together. Okay, young master. Orville said hurriedly, I'll tell the dog farm to hurry up and prepare. Charlie said again, oh right, Orville, prepare a smaller dog cage, I have another use for it. Orville immediately agreed and blurted out, Master, don't worry, I will arrange it properly. Charlie continued, by the way, Mr. Isaac, I still have one more thing for you to do. Isaac hurriedly said, Master, please tell me. Charlie said, you will prepare a complete set of kidney dialysis equipment for me. Send the whole set of equipment to Orville's kennel. In addition, do you have a trustworthy nephrologist in your contact circle? If you have, please refer one to me. Dialysis equipment. Isaac hurriedly asked, Master, is there any kidney failure among Walter's men? Charlie glanced at Walter and sneered, not yet, but there will be soon. There will be soon. Walter on the side, found himself dumbfounded and whispered. Then, he was very puzzled, what will be FC King soon? This person Charlie, and his words simply are inexplicable. FC King hates such people the most, everything they like to say is vague and unclear. Not sure. Just when he hadn't figured out what Charlie meant. Charlie said to Isaac again, also, Mr. Isaac, think of a way to get me a little mercury dichloride, it is a very useful thing. As soon as Charlie said this, Walter was struck by lightning. Why does this Wade want mercury dichloride for? Also, why has he ordered the people to prepare dialysis equipment for? Also, he just asked someone to prepare dialysis equipment, and what did he say immediately after? There will be a transplant soon. What is going to happen there? Now, he has asked someone to prepare mercury dichloride again. Isn't this meant to be for me? And at this point, Walter felt that the whole body was about to collapse. He knelt on the ground and crawled in front of Charlie, crying and said, Mr. Wade, please don't play with me. If you are not satisfied with the 100 million United States dollars, I can add another 100 million for you, please. Raise your hand high, let me be free. Charlie waved his hand and said with a serious face, Walter, we have an old saying in China that says, according to the way of human beings, you can still treat others' body. You are an American, and you may know very little about Chinese culture. Isn't this just an opportunity for you to practice it yourself? Firsthand. Walter went crazy and cried again and said even with more desperation, I don't want to practice. I don't want to practice. Mr. Wade, please give me a way out. No matter how much money you need, just say a word, no matter how much money. I am willing to give. Please don't fix me, I'm still young. Charlie smiled and said, then I really want to congratulate you. I like to mention that kidney failure at such a young age could be fatal, but you can rest assured that I will keep you connected to the dialysis machine 24 hours a day to ensure that you don't die. Charlie said coldly, compared to what you did, I am acting so kind. Am I not? Walter wailed in fright. Mr. Wade, I beg you to forgive me or let me call my dad, and I will ask him how much money he can give you if he does more than he can. How much is it that would be enough for you? Charlie smiled and shook his head, and said indifferently, you don't have to daydream. From now on, you have completely disappeared in his world, and he can no longer find anything about you. Any clues? In the future, you will lie down in the cage of the kennel, eat what dog eats, drink what that dog drinks, and get dialysis if you need dialysis on the spot. After that, Charlie added, and you can rest assured, compared to your nasty methods, I am much softer than you. You only know that poisoning people, regardless of treatment, and no matter how long the person who was poisoned by you can live, you can be regarded as a bandit that kills or buries. But, after all, we are still civilized people. The way we civilized people do things is that since we control the killing, we have to control the burying. Not only will I give you free treatment, but I will also provide you with food and housing. Most importantly, I at least guaranteed you that you will not die in the next 10 years. After Walter listened to these words, the whole person's spirit and emotions completely collapsed. He has been a dude for more than 20 years. Although he has harmed many people, he has never experienced any suffering himself. He has always had his way out no matter what he did. Right now, Charlie has already pronounced his future, and his future is to stay in a dark dog cage and survive on dialysis. He cannot even imagine such a thing even in his worst nightmares. Such punishment, for him, is far more terrifying than hell or dying. He never dreamed that Charlie would be such a cruel character. Only then did he realize how much trouble he had caused in the past. So he looked at Doris. He saw in her his last resort. Thus he begged her, crying and wailing, "Doris, please hand me over to the police. I accept all the legal sanctions and I am ready for a just trial. Please, Doris. Have some pity on me. After all, I am your class fellow. Doris, please." Walter knew very well in his mind. Although it is terrible to go to jail, at least he can go to jail in good health. If he really falls into Charlie's hands and leaves his fate to him, it is all torture and terrible agony ahead. Not only will he suffer from various diseases, but he may even die in the kennel in the end. So in comparison, going to jail is really too humane. Charlie sneered and ridiculed. "Walter, you have become so fast. You were begging Doris to ask her not to hand you over to the police. How come a few minutes later, you start begging her to hand you over to the police?" Walter cried out and said, "Mr. Wade. Mr. Wade, please call 110 and let the police take me away. I am a criminal. Criminals should accept the sanctions of the law, so don't bother yourself with giving me justice." Then he looked at Doris again, crying and begging, "Doris, please say something, help me beg Mr. Wade. Doris, I kowtow to you." Before the words were over, Walter went desperately to the ground and kowtowed to the floor, banging his head over and over on the ground. Doris didn't say a word at this time. Charlie just said that he should use his own way to treat his body. Although the methods are a bit terrible, it is the best end for people like Walter. After all, Charlie still planned to keep him alive, but when he planned to kill her father, he didn't plan to have any kind of mercy. If she would not agree to his dirty demands, he would definitely not lend a helping hand to her father. In the end, in the case of her dad, death was the only end. Therefore, Doris knew very well in her heart that at this time she must not have any kindness towards this criminal. She must control the women's urges of sympathy and emotional weakness. Therefore, she said coldly to Walter, "I'm sorry, Walter, you are not worthy of my sympathy for this rubbish. You have created your own fate, and you are all responsible for it." Walter was extremely desperate and cried, "Doris, I know I was wrong. I beg you to give me a chance to make up for my mistakes and reform myself. Otherwise, even if you tortured me to death, your father wouldn't be able to turn back time. Everyone is an adult. Since the incident has happened, we should carefully negotiate the follow-up solutions and remedies. This is much more realistic than investigating the fault alone." Charlie said coldly before Doris could speak. "Walter, from now on, if you say one more word without my permission, then I will extend the 10-year deadline for you with 1 more year." Hearing this, Walter was frightened and dared not say even 1 word more. Charlie ignored him but continued to say to Isaac, "Mr. Isaac, I want you to use all your available relationships. In the past 3 days, all the surveillance videos of Walter captured in the city must be taken from the surveillance system. Delete it completely. I want other people to be unable to find his whereabouts by any means. Even if the Rothschilds come in person, they must not find any clues that bring them to him." Isaac said without hesitation, "Master, don't worry, I will completely erase him from the monitoring records. Even if it is the King of Heaven, the great Master himself, it will not be possible to find out any whereabouts and clues pointing towards him." Charlie smiled satisfied and said, "Okay, I leave these matters to you and Mr. Orville. Hurry up and move your men. After you get it done, let me know. I will send Walter to you downstairs. You will take him and his men to the kennel together. It is time for action." Isaac and Orville moved extremely fast. Within a quarter of an hour, all of Walter's men in Oris Hill, including the Asong who was about to throw the body, were controlled by the 2 of them. For Oris Hill People's Hospital, Isaac came in person. His men took their guns directly and surrounded the 2 cars under Walter's use. As soon as the guns were aimed at the 5 men, all of them immediately surrendered, and obediently let themselves grabbed by the men sent for the job. Immediately afterward, all 5 people were taken into a modified minibus. And their Rolls-Royce and Buick commercial were driven away by Orville's men. These 2 cars will be sent directly to a car recycling factory tonight, where they will be disassembled, squeezed into a pile of scrap iron, and thrown into a chain steel furnace. In other words, after tonight, it would be impossible to find the whereabouts of these 2 cars. Afterward, Isaac called Charlie and respectfully said, "Master, the 5 people downstairs in the hospital are all under control, where are you? I'll send someone over and take that Walter away." Charlie said, "Come directly to the number 1 intensive care unit of the nephrology department." "Okay, master." Walter, who had not dared to speak anymore, burst into tears when he heard Charlie's call with Isaac. He really didn't expect that he would fall into such a trap and see a tragic end. He thought he was the raptor crossing the river and coming to Oris Hill to swim freely, so he naturally didn't put Doris in his eyes, but wanted to take the opportunity to secure her as a plaything, and then drain her use value. However, who could have predicted that there are people like Charlie with hands, eyes, and harsh methods in a small place like Oris Hill? Walter regretted it very much, but regret could not solve any problems. From the day he decided to poison Doris's father, his fate was already doomed. Soon, Isaac took people to the ward. The moment Walter saw Isaac, he seemed to have seen a ghost. Just now, Charlie and Isaac only made a voice call on WeChat. Walt only knew that Charlie was communicating with his subordinates, but Walter didn't know who his subordinates were. However, when he saw Isaac, his whole body was instantly struck by lightning. "Isaac, Mr. Isaac," Walter blurted out subconsciously. Why are you here?" When Walter first came to Oris Hill, out of basic etiquette, he took the initiative to visit Isaac. The reason why he came to visit Isaac was that he knew that Isaac was the spokesperson of the Wade family in Oris Hill. It can be said that he is the person with the strongest background in the city. When he first arrived, he naturally wanted to be familiar with the man calling shots. However, the two met only at that time. In Walter's cognition, Isaac represents the pinnacle of Oris Hill's influence, but he never dreamed that Isaac would appear here. Isaac looked at Walter, smiled playfully, and said, "Walter, when you saw me last time, didn't you say that you have admired the Wade family for a long time? The man in front of you is the young master of the Wade family." "What?" Walter felt his heart being run over by a heavy loaded train in turn. "I unexpectedly angered the Wade family's young master. What kind of idiot am I that would anger young master Wade family? The Wade family's strength is at least dozens of times stronger than the Hogwitz family." Thinking of this, Walter really realized how sad and ridiculous he was and how foolish at the same time. He thought when he came to Oris Hill that he could do whatever he wanted as long as he avoided Isaac, but he didn't expect that he would provoke the Wade family's young master all at once, let alone Isaac. So, while he kept beating his face vigorously, he cried and said, "Master, I have no eyes and I didn't think I would offend you. I didn't know that Doris was your friend. If I knew it, beat me to death. I won't have any attempts against her." Charlie smiled and asked him, "Do you know that Embrand Group is also my industry?" Walter's eyes widened, and he blurted out, This. I really don't know about this, Master Wade. If I knew, you can tell, do I look so courageous, I would not dare to have any evil thoughts about the Embrand Group." Before Walter came, he specifically checked the background of the Embrand Group. However, because the company was bought by the Wade family as a gift to Charlie, it was not included in the Wade family's own assets. He checked, but didn't understand the background. He thought it was just a real estate company in the province. In addition, he wanted to quickly gain a foothold in China, and even quickly achieve profitability, and Doris happened to be the vice chairman of the Embrand Group, so he started with cultivating Doris to make his idea come true. He always felt that as long as Doris could be controlled by him, he would not only be able to possess Doris, but also draw a part of the blood from the Embrand Group in order to quickly improve his strength. But he didn't even think that the company he wanted to suck blood was actually Wade family and Master Wade's property. This is like a mouse, thinking about the tiger's food carelessly. It is simply seeking a dead end, no chance of survival. Isaac glanced at Walter at this time, with a bit of pity in his eyes, and thought in his heart, this Walter can be regarded as a handsome and talented person, plus the family is also a wealthy business class. The future is limitless for such a progeny. But, what is not good for him, he provoked the young master. Isn't this rushing to fly more than 10,000 kilometers from the United States to die? Immediately, Isaac looked at Charlie and asked respectfully, "Master, shall I take him away now?" Charlie nodded. "Take him away." Walter was frightened and limp, and blurted out, "Master, Please let me go, Master Wade. My grandma is from the Rothschild family. You should have heard of the Rothschild family, right? In the list of top-notch families, rich in all countries, and the entire economic and energy lifeline of Europe and America are in the hands of the Rothschild family. If you let me go, I can help you get online with the Rothschild family, and let you cooperate with them. This is good for you and you can get fortunes in days, that you dreamed in years. Charlie sneered when he heard it. I'm sorry, I'm not interested in working with the Rothschild family. Seeing that the attempts were unsuccessful, Walter was dying to struggle and said, if you really insist on locking me up for inhumane torture, once the Rothschilds know about it, have you considered the consequences? Although my last name is not Rothschild, I, nevertheless, have a quarter of my blood from the Rothschild family. Rothschild will not allow anyone to treat offspring with their blood in this way. By then, they will not let you go. They will only make you die worse. When Isaac heard this, he slapped Walter angrily, and said coldly, are you looking for death? When your death is approaching, you dare to speak rashly to the young master, believe it or not, I will cut your tongue. Charlie waved his hand to interrupt Isaac at this time, and said calmly, Mr. Isaac, let him say what he wants to say. Walter yelled in panic, I'm done. You'd better consider carefully whether you really want to offend the entire Rothschild family because of me. Charlie nodded, smiled, and said playfully, to tell you the truth, I am not afraid to offend the Rothschild family, because even if they don't come to me, I will find them sooner or later. Speaking of this, Charlie paused slightly, and said in a firm and domineering tone, I still have a blood debt, and I have to pay for it with the Rothschild family slowly.